Good. Right. Well, welcome, friends. Now, Wangeki, is that correct? Wangeshi, okay. It's being called Modwena. I always get my name pronounced wrong, so I try to take care. But Wangeshi, I've got it pronounced right. I'm going to ask you each in turn just to introduce yourselves and explain perhaps a little bit about what you do, so that the audience are familiar with you. And then we will get into the fascinating area of, is Africa where M-Pesa is, and they led the world, actually. So we have some very interesting, I think, stories to be told out of the emerging markets, which other parts of the world can learn from. So hopefully we will explore some of those in a minute. But Wangeshi, would you like to start?
All right. My name is Awangeshi Kanjama. I'm Kenyan nationality. I work at Safaricom where M-Pesa was born. M-Pesa was born in 2007, and I was proud to be part of that journey and just explore it and help grow, bring to life a very special product. Apart from that, I would like to say the theme of this conference and the purpose of this discussion is very fitting for us as Safaricom One because we are increasingly seeing ourselves as a fintech company. I know we're a telecommunication company, but we actually are increasingly transforming into a fintech company. Mobile money revenues make a significant part of our contribution and drive our growth as a business. So I'm a telecommunication expert, but with a lot of mobile money experience, and I'll discuss the rest later through questions.
Christopher.
Good afternoon, Christopher Mbanefo. I am based in Switzerland, multicultural background, roots in Africa. You can take your pick. What do we do? What do I do? My background is not in fintech. My background is not in finance. I'm an engineer, aerospace engineer, worked as a professional pilot, flight testing for many years, aircraft design. And my company got into this space in a kind of an interesting way. So I'll kind of wrap it up very quickly. We wanted to form an airline with a double CO2 offset, meaning that if we produce 50 tons of CO2 on a flight from Geneva to New York, we offset 100 tons of CO2. When we wanted to implement that, we found out that there is no transparent way to actually have your carbon footprint absorbed. And that kind of worried us. And so we started a project within the company to determine what does it take to have a transparent mechanism to offset CO2. The long and short of it, the result of the program was that we developed or are in the process of rolling out now a platform powered by blockchain technology that uses a scientific metric using satellite data and artificial intelligence to assess the carbon absorption capacity anywhere on the planet. So we do this together with the University of Zurich as our technical partner. And so we're able to assess terrestrial carbon sinks as well as marine carbon sinks. Using a blockchain platform, we're now able to link CO2 emitters directly with CO2 converters. It allows immediate, transparent, secure value transfer between the two transacting parties, for which we had to develop a payment token, stroke crypto. And by so doing, we're able to come up with a very interesting value proposition that allows us to give an economic value to a carbon sink. And now this opens up a huge area of potential and also for the development of new business models that can now be created in so-called under or less developed regions of the world. So this is where it becomes very exciting. And we can talk about that a bit later, but let me pass on the mic here. Thank you.
Okay. Paula, hello.
Hello everyone, I'm Paula Petkova and I'm currently based in UAE. However, I used to live here in the beautiful Istanbul, so my career started in the treasury. And ever since I started my career, I was always interested in Islamic finance. I always think it's a great thing to find a niche. So my specialty are derivatives. And then I was really interested to explore actually how they can be implemented into Islamic finance. and how we can in general implement more complex solutions to it, because I think that people mostly are so intimidated by the complexity of Islamic finance at first place that they're a bit frustrated to implement an extra level, adding, let's say, blockchain or any kind of new technology to it. While actually I try to look at solutions that can generally ease the processes. So how I started is I used to be also a trader of sukuks. So this is probably the sphere where I'm best aware of. So we created a solution with, actually we're still in the process of creating it. We have a platform which helps the issuance of sukuk by an automated matter. So it's a very complex solution and it's just an intro. So if you're interested to talk to me about it, we can discuss it in detail later. But basically we use smart contracts, we use not blockchain, but distributed ledger. And we provide a solution to the more sophisticated corporates which issued sukuks before, that can do it basically with the very, very limited participation of investment banks and also a law office, which you know that this is the highest part of the cost. And thereafter, I moved also to my second venture. As you already know, I really have kind of interest for Sharia compliant solutions. So it's also related into the same sphere, but it's more about trading. It's automated bot, which trades just Sharia compliant stocks.
Thank you very much. So we have two things we need to come out of this: the opportunities that are going to emerge, or what emerging markets can teach us about the opportunities. But before we do that, let's talk about, perhaps you could each explain what were the maybe 3 biggest challenges you faced in getting your different things up and running.
All right. I think for Safaricom, the key things for us were, one, approval, regulatory approval. We have regulators who are not very proactive in the sense that they were very suspicious of mobile money, and therefore just the whole issue around money laundering and KYC was a big issue. So that challenge we face even till now, and one of the key things that we've noticed is that you find you can't get a product easily approved because you need a regulatory approval. The second issue is the tax regimes we find ourselves in. Mobile money products, especially in our country, Kenya, and in different, whether you say Tanzania or somewhere else, you'll find that are considered cash cows. So they attract high levels of tax, so that is a problem. And then there's the issue and concern around fraud. And it's really around identity theft, where you find very many times somebody trying to take the identity of another to carry out a transaction. And that, for people who in Africa haven't grown up through a digital kind of era, tends to create challenges with trust. So those are the key issues that we faced and we're dealing with through various mechanisms.
There's so many challenges that I can't even tell you whether it's 1, 2, or 3. There are about 27 challenges. No, I'm just kidding.
Stop at 21.
Okay, I hear you. No, there are multiple challenges, but I think at the end of the day, we have to recognize them for what they are, and we have to be proactive, and you have to be prepared to think out of the box. Yes, we have a challenge with regulators in the sense of, are you doing an STO? Is your payment token identified as a security or not, depending on who is defining it? Then you have the situation where regulators are not coming out, spelling it out black and white as to this is what it is. They issue guidelines. It's a guideline, which means that tomorrow they can change their minds. So the regulatory framework is still very, let's say, it's still very fluid. It doesn't help that everybody is looking at the US, looking what the SEC says or does, because they may say nothing today, tomorrow they may say something else, and then they say you have not been compliant retroactively. You may be, your banking partners, your financial partners may be looking at certain penalties. So it's a bit of a potpourri. But then as an entrepreneur, what do you say? Do you say you wait and then lose the economic advantage, the economic opportunity? Or do you say, you know what, let's damn the consequences and move? We will face that problem when we actually get there. And so I think what is happening, generally speaking, is we are in a time of change. We are in a time of human development where we are at an inflex point. The trajectory of the human species can either go this way or that way. Nobody knows. You superimpose on that issues of climate change, nobody knows what's going to happen. You superimpose on that political insecurities and. What is risk? How do you quantify risk? And yet, with all the technology that we have, nobody can tell us, is it going to rain tomorrow in Istanbul or not? With all the, whatever, with all the predictive analytical tools that we have, we can't even predict that. And then nobody expected a small little microorganism that seemed to have come alive on us in Wuhan is now affecting everything. So if we cannot predict tomorrow, you know what? Don't worry. Relax. Do what you have to do. Face the consequences when they come.
I think that you gave a great global view of all kinds of challenges it's possible to face. I'll be a bit more specific what I faced with our startups. So I believe that the challenges are all around from the very first step until the very last day of the launch and on the day-to-day business. But maybe the hardest part is to find quality team members, actually, committed ones who have good intention. And it's very hard to find talent these days, especially when you work in a niche. So they need to understand, for example, when you get developers, they cannot just be the best developer you can find there. They need to understand from finance, they need to understand AI, they need to have so many added skills. And when you find this kind of person, of course, they have very high costs related to it because they are a rare talent. So to build a quality team is insanely hard. So you need to find that kind of people who really believe in your idea, and at the same time, they have the time to dedicate themselves. So this, I believe, building the team maybe is the hardest part when you initiate specifically startup in a niche. And then when it comes to regulatory, everybody knows the pain. So the issue is that I'm on the side of the regulators because I think that there's so many risks involved in technology. And me as a financier, even, it's a very long topic now, I don't want to open again the cryptocurrencies, but me personally, I'm feeling stressed when it comes to all these topics because we don't know what's going to happen, with the climate change and also with our money in 5 years. We have no clue. And if you're not so good with technology, maybe you won't even know where your money went one day. Anyway, I'm not going into details of this, but when it comes to regulatory, mostly the central banks, the regulators got specialists to deal with specific startups like us. But then they also learn in the process, and it's very extensive process. So you need to come back to them on weekly basis, on daily basis, so you need to dedicate 1 to 2 people from the team who would be just deal with that. And somebody who also understands legal language, so then it makes one more addition to the niche team. And then, of course, when it comes to the launch, to find the very right customers to test with and to satisfy the regulators at the same time. So I think that these are the biggest challenges when we talk about stage 1.
I noticed that none of you are talking about financial intelligence, but none of you have actually mentioned a shortage of money. Was that because you all had some magic money tree in your gardens and were able to just find the money to do it?
Money is definitely a challenge, but there are solutions to the money problem that you can actually get. But the real issues is the lack of awareness with your stakeholders to get the product off the ground. So you don't want to find yourself spending a lot of money and then having to deal with a lot of regulatory hurdles. But I just wanted also just to swing the discussion a bit to opportunities, because all these things we've mentioned for us have been really key opportunities. So let me speak about the regulators. I strongly believe whenever there is a wave of change or a technology evolution or innovation, it is very important to carry the regulators with you.
don't assume they know. They come from a point of defense. They come from a point of, I mean, I say this humbly, of ignorance. So the thing we've done is we've found that we have to educate regulators. We have to dedicate our staff to work with them so that they are able to pass regulations that are a bit more complementary. So there's a lot of relationship building and stakeholder management. The other opportunity that also has come through for us, which is key, is that there are lots of people interested in fintechs. So to your point earlier, it is possible to get funding. It is possible to collaborate a lot. In the previous session that was held, there were lots of concerns about fraud and different banking applications. But it's very difficult to tackle fraud in isolation. So you need to tackle fraud in an ecosystem. There's also the huge discussion, I think, and it's becoming quite critical, who owns what, especially when it comes to data. So you're the customer, you have to give consent, a lot of your data is sitting in different pockets. But look, data is at the heart of the fintech discussion. If you do not have the data, then you can't learn about the customer. One of the things we find a lot of smaller fintechs coming to us about is they need to collaborate with us as a telco because we have a lot of data about the customer. We know different things that make it possible for them to offer services to the customer. So I think as we move in more into a digital age, the problems are different. It's not that money is not a consideration. One of the things that is clear is that you do need money to scale. But one of the fundamental things that we are dealing with and grappling with is this whole issue of ownership of customer information. And therefore, it does impede the rate at which you're able to innovate. So that's really a key issue for us, and it's a core discussion we're having constantly in the office. I don't know whether my colleagues are facing that problem, but ownership of data, KYC, those are things that we're beginning to grapple with in a very, very serious way. So those are the real issues we're discussing today.
Just before I move on, can I just pick up one point before we move on, which is, are you talking to your customers about this? As it's their data?
So we are mandated. I mean, we borrowed very heavily from Europe in terms of their GDPR protection rules, and we have gone about educating customers. But are we telling the customers? The truth is, we are seeking their consent and we are creating their awareness, but we could do more. So I don't want to exaggerate and say, look, we are out there telling customers that we're using their data. It's a very delicate discussion. But let me give an example that really kind of puts the customer at the center. When a customer has to do a banking transaction, because it is very pivotal, that consent is absolutely necessary. And therefore, in those instances and in that use case, there's a lot of education about customer data. So we are learning. We haven't mastered it yet, but it is something we will need to improve on.
Thank you. Paula, and then I'll take Christopher.
So I just want to add a short point here about the funding and why I didn't mention it, because I'm also an angel investor and I'm financial, so I love to look at financial statements and what the money is actually used for. I truly believe that if you're very dedicated, and that's the whole idea and beauty of startups in the digital world today, that you can build a solution at zero cost as long as you have the talents. That's the beauty of it. Before, if you need to start a business, for example, you want to open a restaurant, you need to pay at least for the rent, for the chairs, etc. While this digital age gives us the great opportunity of building things without initial capital, as much as we use our skills. But what I see all around is people who they have the great idea, but then they want to raise, let's say, 2 million to hire the best developers to do this and that. And no offense, but this can be executed by any great project manager when you have already the 2 million. So I was always sticking to the point that you should build your solution. You should have the team already, and then you should test it, and it should be the correct solution. And then you can go to investors to expand, to go live or to expand, depends on which stage you are. And especially in UAE, I know a few successful companies who built completely their solutions in-house, sitting in a villa, and they launched. And one of them actually, I don't know if I should mention name, but one of them is Sarwa, and now they're at a few weeks ago they raised, I think, almost $10 million for expansion. So I think that this is a true success story.
I will shift gears a little bit and try to show some light on some of the opportunities that exist through digital transformation in the developing region of the world. which is kind of exciting. You mentioned Africa, and what I say about Africa is applicable to most parts of the world. We're in a very exciting phase right now in the sense that we have the opportunity in Africa to leapfrog. So what is regarded as a disadvantage today can actually be the beginning of an advantage tomorrow. And this is where innovation comes in, being able to think out of the box, being able to visualize, being able to project, and being able to connect the dots using applicable technology. And this is where I get very excited about the prospects. Now, what this also implies is that the concept of having a profession is also no longer relevant. It is outdated. The key winners tomorrow and today are those who can apply knowledge to find solutions that are relevant to the society. As long as you can maintain your relevance to society, you're in. The minute you're no longer relevant to society, you're out. So if somebody says, you know what, I'm a BlackBerry specialist in ERP solutions, guess what? You're out. Unless you can use that skill set and apply it to what is relevant today, what is required today. You're back in the game, you see. And so let's give a practical example. You were talking about raising money. Now, you have a situation whereby in Africa, 20 years ago, let me speak of Nigeria. Nigeria population of close to 200 million people today. We had less than 50,000 landlines 20 years ago in the country. In Kenya, probably similar numbers. Now, if you want to connect 200 million people using copper wire, forget it. You never catch up. It's just not going to happen. So the advent of cellular technology allowed us to leapfrog, where in many ways Africa is more connected today than Europe. But Europe still has copper lines, which they don't know what to do with it. They're replacing it with now fiber optics. Now 5G is coming in, making fiber optics look like, you know what? What's the advantage here? So this is where it becomes exciting, whereby if Africa and other developing regions in the world connect the right dots, select the right technology path, so you not end up in a one-way street, but a technology path that provides opportunities moving up, provides solutions, things look totally different. Now, let me get some more juice into the system here, okay? Money. People look at Africa and say, you know what, you're poor. Why are you poor? Because you don't have this piece of paper that Uncle Sam prints, probably on a Japanese, printer, whatever, or made in China printer, using made in Chinese ink or something, So because you don't have this piece of paper, you're poor. Okay. So why are you coming to Africa, knocking at my door? You want copper, you want this, you want that, you want that. You want something I have, but you say I'm poor. So poverty, what's the definition of poverty? What's the definition of richness, right? Now you have a situation where 1 square kilometer of forest, primary forest, absorbs up to 700 metric tons of CO2. At a price of 20 to 30 euros a ton, that equates to a revenue potential of up to 21,000 euros per square kilometer of forest.
What time period?
Over 1 year.
1 year.
Okay? Over 12 months. Now, if you have 10 square kilometers, that's over 200,000 euros. Now you go to a rural population, so-called disenfranchised people, and you harness that CO2 capacity. You monetize that, and you make that revenue available to them, and all of a sudden, you're kickstarting a whole new ecosystem right there, right? This is what blockchain technology allows us to actually do. And with, let's say, crypto transfer, they get immediate value. Now this opens up a whole spectrum of opportunities, you see? And this is where it's now going. Now, all of a sudden, it changes the value perception of a forest, of a tree. All of a sudden, we've done the mathematics for Mozambique, as an example. Mozambique has the capacity to monetize in 1 year between 3 and 5 billion euros in 1 year. That has a higher potential revenue than what Mozambique is now trying to do with their oil industry. We did a study for the island of Bougainville in one of the South Solomon Islands, whereby they have a value proposition from an Australian mining company to do copper mining. We then said, let's give you a plan B. The carbon sequestration capacity on the island will generate them 130 million euros a year. Now, if you look at the solid mineral industries, the concession that the oil companies pay, or the mining companies pay, is typically between 10 and 15%. So what this means is for Bougainville to get the equivalent income of 130 million means that the Australian mining company has to take out of the ground 1.3 billion this year, next year, and sometime along the line, there's no more copper, but you have a big hole, you have toxic waste, and they move. You're left on your island with the toxic waste, no copper, and where's your income coming now? And so all of a sudden, the value proposition, the opportunities, the way of thinking now changes. The value perception changes. All of a sudden, you know what, my trees are worth more than what that stuff is that you're trying to take out of the ground. It opens up ecotourism. It opens up so many other things. And all of a sudden, you have people, the youth, the young ones are the ones that will now come up with the new business models. And last but not least, we're in a situation now, as far as raising capital. We're sitting here, angel investors, maybe we're all wasting our time. Why? Because the kids today, the young entrepreneurs that have a vision, there's something called crowdfunding. So if we sit down, if I collect $5 from, I can raise more money provided I have an idea that is switched on and I get followers. You start a movement. And all of a sudden, it raises the question mark on the relevance of an angel investor who comes with certain conditions and may not be the ideal team member that you're looking for. But if I get the right team members, I can maybe get the money. I can generate the movement. The market is now waiting for the implementation, the rollouts of the program. And all of a sudden, you have totally different dynamics. This is exciting. This is the opportunity that we have that now can be put into action in Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, etc. The so-called, no, that's where the money is. Okay?
Fantastic. Paula.
I already said my point.
The opportunities. Have you talked about the opportunities?
The opportunities, I completely agree. Actually, I wanted to mention the crowdfunding. Today, it's enough to be creative. There's so many ways actually to acquire funds, and I think that there's so many accelerators, programs popping up every day, and I see a trend that I really like. Accelerators were very trendy a few years back, but now people started doing scale-up programs. So this is very great because I know many companies which they raise their seed capital, the Series A, but they cannot scale up. And sometimes to create programs either for funding or either for partnerships is so valuable. And this is happening all around Europe, Asia, US, of course. I never mention US, by the way, when I'm talking, because everything happened already in US, and we're just taking ideas from there. But the important thing is that these things happen now in the Middle East. They happen in Turkey, also in Saudi. I can talk for hours about Saudi and fintech and the incredible market they opened up and all the programs that they started. So the opportunity is definitely there, and the more creative you are, you can definitely acquire funding and not be simply limited to angel investors.
Can I just check 1 minute? Because I had a question mark over whether, is Nahuza here? You are here, right. So we must probably maybe take yours as the last comment, because we're a bit running late, so I know that you're going to give a talk in just a minute, so if we could.
I'd like to talk about the opportunities as well around the products. So what has happened in Kenya, for example, we have a refugee problem, and many people find refugees a challenge. But from a fintech perspective, actually, solutions around refugees have been found. So we have a large refugee camp in the northeast of Kenya. It's called Kakuma, and it's become an economy of its own. So what we've done is we've given them Wi-Fi, we've given them, and the other thing that happens is when refugees come into your country, they don't have an identity. So we've actually, using the mobile phone, you can register and you get an identity. And a lot of them are doing business. So the refugee business case has actually been something that has been replicated in South Sudan. It's also been replicated in Ethiopia. So NGOs come, they collaborate with fintechs, and they give them money. The other interesting opportunity that we have created for businesses, especially SMEs, is something we call the cashless solution. We had a big issue in Kenya, especially for beer distributors, where they get carjacked. What am I saying? When the money is being transported to the bank, it can be stolen and stuff. So one of the things that we came up with was a cashless solution, and it actually began to help businesses not store a lot of cash on their premises, not having to deal with cash transit services, and that actually began to help them reinvest their money. So that was one of the solutions that we came up with. The other things we did is for parents in the rural areas who found it very difficult to go to banks, we have a system of payment which allows them to pay via their phone, pay for their school, pay in installments. And so there are many opportunities, and I think I resonate with what you were saying. I think in Africa, we don't have an issue of, I think people have talked a lot about people growing old. We have a lot of young people. And so one of the things we want to do is for them to be empowered. We want to empower their families. In Safaricom, our mantra is very clear. We want to transform lives. And so we have used mobile money to solve the problems that we are seeing around us. So I think I'd like to close by saying there are more opportunities than there are challenges.
I'm going to assume that you both agree. So I suspect we could sit here all afternoon. I think the message I've taken away, which is quite interesting, because the previous panel was really about fintech being at the center of the world. And what I'm sort of hearing is some of these concepts like financial services or commodities, which were seen as the core, are going to start moving to the periphery. And the new opportunities around the new solutions are going to become the core.
Fintech is the tool.
Fintech is a tool.
And it depends on the artist to create. And that's what we have to do. Fintech is just a tool. Nothing
There we
more,
go. There is
less.
an image for us to take away. Thank you. Most entertaining and valuable. I really appreciate it. Perhaps a round of applause.